How's that?
Great.
All right, good deal. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I trust all of you had a healthy and relaxing Thanksgiving weekend. Co-chair Michael Udelson sends his regrets as he has a simultaneous Zoom call for work from which he cannot escape this afternoon. But Mike is going to rejoin us in January, and then he'll also brief us on discussions he's had with the county moving forward on CPACE funding sooner rather than later, which I believe we all agree is definitely worth our while. So this afternoon's meeting of the committee is actually the 5th since we were chartered, and our final one for calendar year 2020. Our next meeting is next year on January 7th, 2021. Tina, are we all squared away on dates for 2021?
We are, Matt, and I will be sending that out via email, a list of all the dates for 2021.
Terrific, thanks. So there's no action for us today. I think we are still meeting the first Thursday of the month, right?
That's correct. That does not change. The first Thursday at 3:30.
3:32, right, good. So the dates will be out and they'll be on our calendar shortly. Thanks so much, Tina, much appreciated. From the perspective of the minutes, let me ask if there are any proposed changes to the draft minutes from November. Any feedback, any comments, any proposed changes? Okay, well, if none, then may I have a motion to approve the minutes? How about I move the minutes as submitted? How about a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor? Either aye or just wave your hands with a thumbs up. Okay, the ayes have it. The thumbs have it. The minutes from November are approved. Thank you. Before I ask Mike Garland to introduce our two guests from the Monroe County Department of Transportation who will speak to us on Complete Streets and that initiative, let me offer several quick announcements. First, the Bergman Associates Statement of Work we reviewed in detail in past meetings passed through the Environmental and Public Works Committee unanimously with no discussion last week and is on the agenda for next week's full Monroe County Legislature meeting. That is really good news for us. I'm pleased that's moving quickly. Mike Garland, I understand as Bergman moves forward on their timeline, we as a committee will have an opportunity to review and comment on their draft work products at our monthly meetings as they achieve their scheduled milestones. Do you want to say a word or two about that, Mike?
I'd be happy to, Chairman and Co-Chairman. In that regard, yep, we'd like to bring Bergman back at appropriate times to either solicit feedback from the team or provide some explanation with some of the work that they've done so that this committee feels like they're involved in the process throughout the development of phase 1, and obviously that will continue into phase 2. So I'll rely on Joe and Pat working with Bergman to find those appropriate times, and if there's material to review in advance, we make sure we get it out to the committee in a timely manner.
Perfect, thanks, Mike. Any questions for Mike? Okay, if none, let me move on. Secondly, I want to thank Kate Walker. Thanks to Kate and Sue Hughes Smith, we will have a couple of guest speakers from Ulster County speak to their climate action plan at our January meeting. If any of you have particular questions for our Ulster guests, please email them to Kate before Friday, December 12th. We will have a pre-meeting conference call with Amanda Laval and Europa McGovern from Ulster the week after to tell them what we as a committee really want to gain from their experience at Ulster. Their plan was actually approved by their county executive in June of 2019, so they've been at this about a year, give or take the coronavirus crisis. So please, by all means, comments to Kate by a week from Friday the 12th, and we'll have a pre-meeting conference call with them afterwards to set up our January 7th talk. Kate, did you want to add anything? Is Kate on?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, good. Thanks. I thought you were. Thanks for organizing that, Kate, and for making this discussion from Ulster happen. Okay. If no other thoughts for Kate, thirdly and finally, I have been informed that today is actually legislator Carla Boyce's birthday. She couldn't join us today, but wish Carla a happy birthday when you see her. Okay. A couple odds and ends we'll discuss after the presentation, but Mike, Would you kindly introduce our featured speakers, James Cowan and Thomas Folick? Thanks.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks, Matt. My pleasure to introduce these two individuals to explain to us more about the Monroe County Complete Streets Policy. I learned about the Complete Streets Policy last year with the sustainability team. And it's a very interesting topic. And it's one, as you may recall, I added to included as part of my sustainability presentation that I'd done to this committee as a topic that I thought would be worthwhile for this committee to learn more about and find ways that we can incorporate it into our climate action plan. It's my pleasure to introduce Jim Pond, as you can read, is the acting director of transportation and doing an outstanding job. He is a licensed engineer, as you know. He's been with the county 27 years. Very, very enthusiastic individual, great at what he does. He loves to ride his bicycle to work, and I give him a lot of credit for that. And he's doing a great job. But I think one of his greatest accomplishments in his tenure here at Monroe County will be having hired Tom Pollock. And Tom is an outstanding contribution to the county and DOT team. If he's been hired by Jim, then he's a smart and talented individual. And I've observed that because Tom was part of our sustainability team last year and was a really enthusiastic and contributing member to that team. And I expect he'll be part of our team going forward with our internal working group once we advance phase 1 and even into phase 2. So I'm glad both Jim and Tom accepted the invitation to meet with us today and make the presentation on the Complete Streets Policy.
Thank you. This will be a joint presentation. Tom will lead for the first part. I'll be leading more in the second, and we'll interact. You are welcome to pause, ask questions at any point through here. You might find that handy. And yes, Mike, I rode my bike to work yesterday and today. I've got a fat tire bike now, so I've actually ramped up to all seasons riding. So that's kind of neat. But anyway, go ahead, Tom, and we'll get into the slides here. Tom, you're going to start off?
Sure. So thanks, Mike, for the introduction. Just a brief overview here. We're going to give you a presentation about our Monroe County Department of Transportation Complete Streets Policy. And as Mike mentioned, this kind of came to be about a year and a half ago in summer of 2019 at our sustainability team. We started talking about it, how we didn't have a formal policy, even though here at the county we've been doing a lot of this for many years, 10 plus years. So we just decided we kind of needed to formalize it a little bit to keep up with the times and other municipalities and the state, federal governments. And we also realized that this could be an important factor in getting transportation funding at the federal level, having a policy like this. So we are going to present to you what we came up with. So just a brief overview to start. What are complete streets? Complete streets are a transportation policy and design approach that requires streets to be designed and operated to enable safe use and support mobility for all users. So that could be people of any age or ability, regardless if they're a driver, pedestrian on a bicycle, or a public transportation rider. As you can see here on the right, a couple of pictures from the inner loop right here in Rochester. As I'm sure everyone on the call knows, this is one of our flagship complete streets projects in the area to date. As of June 14th, 2011, New York State Highway Law was amended to add Section 331, which requires all state, county, and local transportation projects that receive federal or state funding to consider the access and mobility on the road network for all users, all ages, motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit users, as I already mentioned. So what are some benefits of a complete street? Complete streets create more vibrant and accessible communities. They could attract new businesses because they might have more people coming to their business if they can get there on a bike, on a bus, or if they can walk there. So that could also increase the tax base over time. It could also raise property values if you attract more people to the neighborhood or the city or wherever you might be building this complete street. It can reduce greenhouse gases and traffic congestion and improve public health by encouraging walking and bicycling. What are some elements of a complete street? Sidewalks, bicycle facilities, which we'll get more into some of these on future slides coming up. Bus lanes, transit stops, RTS stops, crosswalks, whether they're at a traffic signal or a mid-block crosswalk, or just at a stop-controlled intersection. Median islands, accessible pedestrian signals, which we'll have a picture of later in the presentation. I can tell you a little bit about those. Curb extensions, signs and striping, and streetscape and amenities. So with complete streets, there is quite a bit of a difference between what we typically do or see on a county road, which we're responsible for, or a city street. So just a little overview before I go through this slide. The Monroe County Department of Transportation, which our policy applies to, we are responsible for maintaining county roads, so outside of the city, but we also act as the city's traffic engineer. So although we're not responsible directly for maintaining and designing city streets, we have quite a large influence on their decisions at the City of Rochester Bureau of Architecture and Engineering. So county roads, the characteristics of these roads could vary greatly from rural to urban. We have roads way out in Hamlin, which are very few houses on them, high speed, and you get closer to like an East Ridge Road, West Ridge Road. Those are all, West Ridge is a state road, but that's just an idea of a more urban, suburban feel. Most county roads do not provide sidewalks, which are the town responsibility. So the pedestrians and the joggers must use the road, the shoulder of the road, ideally, if there's no sidewalk present. On county roads, there's often free flow with higher speeds. We're separating stop vehicles like deliveries, parking on the side of the road, texting, getting directions, or if you break down, from the moving traffic, which is more critical at higher speeds. And then shoulders provide a flexible usage that accommodates most users, such as joggers, walkers, and bicyclists, while still providing an area for stop vehicles, mail delivery, etc. City streets are a little bit of a different animal. So there's an urban setting, which often do have sidewalks, on-street parking, frequent transit stops, higher volume of pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicles, lower speeds, but more traffic control devices, stop signs, traffic signals, and closer proximity than you would see out in the rural county roads. So that could regularly interrupt the traffic flow. Shoulders are not typically provided on city streets due to all these other things that I mentioned above. So dedicated bicycle lanes are more often used to provide space for bicyclists, separating them from the vehicles on the road.
Jim, here, just a quick question.
Go ahead.
Have influence with New York State with respect to state roads? I'm thinking in particular of one near me, Route 96, or does the New York State Department of Transportation more or less act autonomously? I'd just be curious what your experience has been with the state.
Most of the time, the state will be completely autonomous from us on a project like that. There can be times when a county road intersects with a state highway. We will have some input when that happens. So there's a corner of up in Penfield, for example, of Atlantic Road and 5 Mile Line Road.
Right.
That road is being changed, and we have the influence only on the county legs of the intersection, and somewhat limited as to our input, but we review the plans as they would influence a county road. But when you're talking about on the state road itself, there's virtually no input at all.
Thank you. That's what I thought based on my experience in town government. Yeah.
So just a little bit about the paved shoulders that I mentioned on the last slide. Often we will have paved shoulders on county roads. And what can these be used for? They can be used for entry and departure from driveways and side streets. Turning space, so if you're going to turn right onto a side street, you can go off onto the shoulder. They do increase the sight distance, especially if you're turning out of a parking lot or a side street. They open it up a little more. You can see both directions. Stopped, parked, and broken down vehicles can certainly make use of the shoulder. Bicyclists can use the shoulder and be out of the travel lane. Joggers and pedestrians, as I mentioned before, mail delivery, garbage pickup, bus stops, although not as often as they are in the city, they are still out on county roads.
School buses.
Yep, school buses as well. Emergency uses for police, fire trucks, and ambulances. Stormwater flow, which is a big thing when designing a road, and snow storage in this area is also a very big consideration.
Yeah, before you go, just to understand the context of this, the reason this is a very important question that we get. Why don't you dedicate bike lanes on county roads. Shouldn't that be the way to go? And so this slide is giving you a lot of details of the advantages of paved shoulders, where you have the most flexibility. And I always look at it this way, and I think this kind of helps. The community that we're looking for on a complete streets is not bicycles with the exclusion of everybody else. It's bicycles, pedestrians, joggers, and so forth. Joggers, by the way, are one of the most overlooked groups, I think, in this discussion, because they don't like sidewalks. Even when the sidewalks are there, they will go out on the road and jog, and they are going to jog against traffic. Bicycles are riding with traffic, so even if you had a bicycle lane, you're going the wrong way when you're a jogger. You have to, by law, stay on the side facing traffic. So there's some real practical problems with taking a shoulder and saying, this is a bicycle lane, it's unidirectional. And I just want to make that really clear, because a lot of people feel the county is not being bike-friendly when they will not mark the bike lanes. And we're not completely denying bike lanes. There are times we have a few, such as a right turn lane starts up to the right, and we will make a bicycle space between the lanes just basically for bicycles. But in general, with not many sidewalks out on county roads and all these uses that are also using the shoulder, we feel that providing the space, as much space as possible for a bicycle or any other user, is the key element, not how we mark it. Okay, and it's kind of a key thing. That's why I really want you to note all the uses on this slide that are besides just bicyclists for a shoulder. Okay, I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Jim. So just one more slide. I kind of talked about this in the beginning, but varying characteristics of county roads. Redmond Road, way up in the northwest corner of Monroe County, as you can see, very open, high speed. I'm sure the speed limit on that road is 50 or 55 miles an hour. And then you can go all the way down to Winton Road in the town of Brighton, and you can see how much wider, longer crosswalks, traffic signal controlled, much more traffic. So these are the different things we have to deal with on county roads when we're designing or redesigning a road. And our one complete streets policy needs to consider these two very different types of road characteristics. So I'm just going to pass it off to Jim now, and he'll get a little more into the specifics of our highway design and our complete streets policy that we put together.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Tom, for that basic introduction there. The concepts, what we're going to do here is get into more details on how we design roads, in particular to meet the objectives you just heard. So one of the things that we're looking for is, that should be lane and shoulder widths, by the way, not land and shoulder widths, sorry about that. I just saw that typo. So lane and shoulder widths for county roads. How do we use the pavement that we have? Now, one of the things that we find with roads in general, very few projects allow us to widen or narrow the pavement. We're usually using what we have, shoulder to shoulder, pavement width. So yes, some projects come up that can actually add or subtract width, and we will talk about that. But generally speaking, as we look for a design, we're trying to figure out what we can do with the pavement that we actually have right now. So lane and shoulder widths are one of the ways we can change that. Edge treatments, there's curb, gutter, swale, ditch. They're going to make a difference in the experience of one of our other users, not in a vehicle, but one of the many users that we have. Is there a drop off, or is there a curb that you have to kind of steer away from because of the catch basins and so forth along there? A drop of a gutter, a swale ditch, of course, goes off, or is it level with a nice transition off? So we have to consider edge treatments in this, but basically, given all this, we're trying to aim for a desirable lane width of about 11 or 12 feet. If there's a lot of trucks, buses, wide vehicles, a curb up against it, we need a little more width to work with. If you're one of the more inner lanes away from the curb, we might be able to get down to as little as 10 feet wide in the case of a road that's not heavy trucks. And like a left turn lane would be a good example. And by the way, your typical vehicle is a little under 7 feet wide. So that gives you can get an idea that although going from 10 to 11 feet does not sound like a lot, when you're a driver, you're increasing your space by something like 25% over what you have. You're going from 3 extra feet to 4 extra feet. It is a big difference. You go to 12 feet, and you're getting some space to work with within the lane. Just give you a little perspective on that. The desirable pavement shoulder widths are 5 to 6 feet. The typical rule of thumb on an official bicycle lane, and I'll use that as a guide, is you need 5 feet of width for a proper bike lane. But bicycles can ride with 4 feet comfortably, particularly on a shoulder. You just don't designate as a bike lane. When you get under 4 feet, you're beginning to have to move toward the travel lane in order to maintain a comfortable distance away from the edge of the road. And so you're beginning to get on that or even left of that white line. That gets very uncomfortable. So that's why we try to make the shoulders what we can. Minimum of 2 to 4 feet. 4 feet is the one you aim for when you have bicycle presence and some volume. Now, we looked at Redmond Road, that very lightly traveled road. It could be more lightly traveled. And if you had a 2-foot shoulder on there, but traffic rarely passes each other, some road like that, Redmond's a little busy, but maybe the 2-foot shoulder works out. You're talking long distances of road. It's very expensive to build a shoulder. So sometimes in that setting, 2 feet would work out. We'll see some guidelines. But 4 feet, certainly where there's a lot of traffic, is our goal. We're stuck with the pavement, what we have. All right, so the bottom bullet is accurate.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. It seems to me, and maybe I don't understand, but it seems to me part of the point of having complete streets is also to slow traffic because it makes it safer for everybody involved, even the people in the cars, if traffic is slower. And I know Matt also went through this discussion on 96 and East Ave and trying to get 5-foot shoulders, which is listed as desirable.
Right.
It would have required lane widths of 10 feet. And it does seem to me, and my understanding from those meetings was that the smaller lanes is preferential if you're looking for traffic to slow down. The more width you give a car or a truck, the less cautious they are. So is there any, thought about controlling speed of traffic as this, as these guidelines are being developed, or?
Yes, well, what we do, okay, so when I restripe a road, whenever we restripe a road, we look exactly at that, the characteristics of the traffic on it. So let's remember the first goal is safety for all users, okay? So what I don't want, if you say, oh gosh, with a 10-foot lane, let's go 9 feet because they'll really have to slow down. They can barely get through. And you get into operational problems when you mismatch the lane widths with the kind of traffic that's on it. So if you have a road like Main Street in downtown Rochester with a lot of RTS buses going back and forth, think about right across near the bus transit station, you got turning vehicles trying to turn on there. You get down too tight and you begin to run into problems with all kinds of things, as you could kind of imagine, with people clipping mirrors and not being able to make the turn. They actually made the turn so tight at a couple of those corners that they had to tear out the curb and put temporary asphalt down until they can get back and fix it. The buses couldn't make the turn. So there's clearly a point where it gets too narrow for vehicles. When that happens, it doesn't help a bicyclist or a jogger or whatever if it's that situation where you don't have shoulders. Now, when you have shoulders added, we get some flexibility because there is that space for a vehicle in a 10-foot lane to, okay, if you absolutely have to use the shoulder for some reason, you have to go around an object or something, You can encroach in the shoulder a little bit and come back around. You can make the lanes a little tighter, but you have to look at the whole cross section, what's there. So a good example on Elmwood Avenue, if that, I believe, is 11-foot lanes, four 11-foot lanes for a 44-foot, and this is going through Brighton near the town hall. Many of us have probably been through there, west of the 12 Corners, east of Clinton. Very tight cross section. You know, you could make 10-foot lanes and you'll end up with a 2-foot shoulder because there's only 11 and 11, 11, 11. So 10's the tightest you can go. You create a 2-foot shoulder. It's not really going to do anybody any good to have that 2-foot shoulder. You're going to force the oncoming traffic to be in two relatively tight lanes next to each other. So you have to be careful. In that setting, it may not be a good idea to do 10-foot lanes. Now, if, on the other hand, you have light enough traffic that you find yourself with spare capacity on the road, we look for these and we've done dozens of road diet changes. We'll talk about that in a little bit. You start taking lanes away, you can get left turn lanes, a whole lane is separating the opposing traffic, you got shoulders created, yeah, then you can sometimes get these 10-foot lanes in there because there's still buffer space. So I can't answer to you what the best lane width is overall without looking at the context of the road. That's kind of the bottom line.
Yeah,
As
so
far as speeds go,
yeah.
as
Could
far
I
as
just
speeds
jump in?
go, sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I was just going to say that the speed, there's a bit of a myth there that going from 11-foot lanes to 10-foot lanes will automatically slow down cars by striping. It is true if you take the curbs and move them and make it tighter, you'll see a slowdown effect. But just moving a stripe over 1 foot, I remember the state DOT did that on Jefferson Road going through Pittsford. They actually added a second line inside the original line to make it 10 foot. The next time they paved it, they put it back. There was no impact on speed whatsoever. So it's the total width of the road you want to pay more attention to as opposed to squeezing the lanes down. So just be careful that we don't try to squeeze these down to 10-foot lanes, leaving very little buffer space, expect the people to slow down and think it's going to stay safe. We just have to be careful about that.
Tom, can I jump in real quick here?
So I definitely.
Sorry. Go ahead, Sue.
I was just going to say, I appreciate the complexity of the problem and the degree to which each road needs its own special attention. I just, and I don't want to get super in the weeds for particular roads, though being a biker on Elmwood in the exact area that you're describing, I just really can't help but, say that, like, I never bike on that road if I can help it because it is so unsafe, right? But if you had 10-foot lanes and you did a bike lane on one side of the road at 4 feet, maybe it would get more use. I'm just suggesting that there may be some other ways of approaching these problems that we haven't really considered the full extent of. That's
well, you would need a minimum of 5 feet to make a bike lane. And we don't have that much width there, even in one direction. I agree. I've ridden Elmwood Avenue myself. I bike a lot. I've been out there, very uncomfortable. You just have to take the right lane and keep a real close eye in your mirror and, have some good lights on. But yeah, that's the only strategy you really have available on a road like that. We have a lot of parallel roads that are much better than that one, like Westfall, but that's a very difficult place.
Jim, can I put a fine point on Sue's point previously? I mean, what she's really trying to get at is the design of roads influences how motorists and bicyclists use them. And so that is what I think she's trying to point out to everyone. Not, of course, she understands that you guys get this. She's trying to make this point for the entire board.
Great.
Matt here.
Okay, if I get into, I'm sorry, but I was going to say that there's some more slides coming talking about what treatment goes to a particular kind of road. That may help to get there.
Okay, I can hold off until you finish. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Let's talk about road diets for a minute. I mentioned this. This is an ideal thing for everybody as long as the road can operate at lower capacity. Yes, that's correct. This is a win-win if we could do this, and we have done this a lot. What happened here, this was a 4-lane road previously. It's Hudson Avenue in Irondequoit. We had a 4-lane road here, no shoulders, and the middle, maybe, well, there might have been a very small shoulder, but nothing of significance. Double yellow down the middle, no left turn lanes. And by changing it to a 3-lane section, we were able to create shoulders on both sides, the 2-way left turn lane in the middle. It probably is a 10-foot travel lane there. It looks pretty tight to the view. I can't guarantee that, but I believe that's what it is. And we did that trying to make the largest possible shoulder space. The only thing you don't see here that the bike committee sometimes complains is why isn't that a bike lane? And I kind of went over the reasons why I think that this is flexible space for everyone, all users. I'm very comfortable with a road like that, riding it, due to the separation of traffic. So this is, if Elmwood had lower volume on it, we would go in this direction too. Elmwood does not have the kind of volume that this could work. I've been asked that many times. There's a difference in the volume, and also how closely are the traffic signals spaced? That's another thing. The more traffic signals you have, the harder it is to get traffic through in just one lane. You know, an open road in the countryside with one lane can carry more than a city street with a bunch of lights all in a row. So we just have to balance all that out. But here's an example of this. We aim for this whenever we can. If you've been around the city or the county for the past 15 years, 20 years, I could probably cite 30, 35 of these we've done. It's a large number in every town. You can find them everywhere. People don't remember that used to be 4 lanes perhaps, so they're like, oh, okay. But if you go back in time, you'd be amazed at how many we did of these. Lots and lots of them. Okay. I'm going to just real quickly go over these because I could kind of tell lane widths are important here. Is everybody still all right? That went to sleep.
I think the camera dropped off.
Okay.
You should still be on.
All right. We may have lost our camera for a minute there, but I'll keep going. Bicycle detection cameras. These are very proactive for Rochester. Not too many people go to the extent that we do, but we've put in at 37 locations, 70 cameras, and they're still being added here and there. We have these pick up bicycles no matter where they put themselves in the road. Bicycle lane, sidebar. Let me just pause. Are you guys hearing me okay? I cannot hear you at the moment. I'm sorry.
We're all
I
good.
can hear you great. I
Thank
can
you
hear
very
you
much.
great. Yep.
I apologize for that.
You bet.
It just one of our computers went to sleep.
No worries.
Okay.
It's all right.
So no matter where the bicyclist puts themselves in the travel lane, we'll pick them up. That overcomes the problem of a bike not having enough metal to be picked up by a loop that's a standard wire in the road, or even where they put themselves in the road. So this is Mount Hope and Ford. The bicycle lane has the little numbers on it. I know this is a little bit cryptic looking to you, but this is looking through the actual camera. The word bike is on the left screen in blue. It's hard to see that, but it's right in the middle of the picture. It says bike. It picked that bike up. It's going to call the green for that bike, and it will hold that green while that bike rides through the view. The bike could also be over, like the person on the left. He's using left side of the right picture. He's using the sidewalk. We're not necessarily going to pick them up. They're probably using the pedestrian button, but we could, as an option, depending on where they put themselves. We can pick up and recognize bicycles and treat them separately. If you're wondering where these are, it's everywhere that the city has designated. They're in the city right now. I don't know if we have any in the county. We may, but if so, it's pretty limited. But anywhere in the city where they have either a bicycle boulevard, designated bike route, or lanes where you're coming up and you need to be detected in order to trip the light. We put these out ahead of the city's bike boulevard implementation. They're in the middle of it right now, and as they've designed the project, they're like, oh, there's already a camera here, which was planned. So that is one thing we do. There are very few cities in the United States that go that far. Many of them ask you to push the button, or some, I've seen a mark on the road, put your bike here and you'll be detected. Now, others are doing this. It's not just us, but video detection is the best way to pick up bicycles, motorcycles as well. This also helps them, even though we don't talk about them much as an alternate user. This takes out that need to have a lot of metal on your bike. So if you have a carbon bike, you don't have to worry about it. Let me just go on to here now. For pedestrians who are blind, as well as the seeing public, these buttons are very helpful. They are a combination of things. They give you feedback that you push the button. If you look at the arrow there, there's a little red light above it that lights up when you push the button, so it acknowledges that you are recognized as a user and you will be served soon. It also vibrates when it's time for the traffic light to turn walk. So if you're blind, you keep your hand around that button. It will vibrate off and it'll, it's time to go. So that's one of your cues. It's nice and somewhat quiet so they can hear traffic conflicting because they also have to listen for that. But it does make noise and it speaks. The voice recordings are custom to each street. It tells you which street. And so right now the walk is on to cross East Avenue. And then it will also let you know when the walk is off. So there's custom, and it tells you to wait when you push the button. So there's all these messages going out with these smart buttons here. And we have put 210 crosswalks at 120 locations there, and they're still being deployed gradually. Wherever we actually did a study to figure out where the most likely users would be. So all users are served by those. And then on the bottom, one of the best things that have come out in quite a while is the countdown pedestrian signal, where you give the number of seconds remaining to cross directly to the user. It counts them down. Every signal that the county owns has these now. We put 2,200 of them out there through a program. And I think some drivers use it too to figure out when the light's going to turn red or yellow, but it's not the intent. And those Z-Crate visors kind of somewhat restrict the view to make it not too obvious for side street people. Okay, get ready to go here. But it's for the pedestrian, and if you walk faster, that allows you to cross later in the don't walk, as opposed to just saying once it starts flashing, everybody stay at the curb. That's the old way of doing it. So now you could judge if you have enough time to go, and you get a sense of where you are in the cycle. It's a very positive feature. Again, we are a municipality that's well ahead of others in that we have them universally applied here. Most municipalities are still using the old type. Maybe they're catching up, but we're ahead of them. A project that's just getting going now, we will not be doing any work in 2020, as it turns out, it's 2021. But we are already, bids have been opened, we're awarding, so we're getting ready to roll, is this thing called the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. It's state money, actually federal aid money coming to us. We are going to put all kinds of enhancements at crosswalks all throughout both the county. This is the county project. There's a city counterpart to it. And we're putting a lot of these rectangular rapid flashing beacons out. This device is a push button that flashes what almost looks like a police strobe light goes off. It blinks left, right, and calls attention to the motorists that there's somebody there, that they're looking to cross the street. It's not on when they're not there, so I like that effectiveness as opposed to something that flashes all the time. We have 10 of these going out, I believe is the right number. The city has even more. We're also going to be enhancing the crosswalk striping that you see there to have, in many of these cases, added sidelines as well as the parallel lines you see there. So you'll have a full, what we call a full ladder. Left, both the rungs and the rails of the ladder, which will call more attention to them. It's more paint on the road. The signs will be doubled up, so the pedestrian sign you see on the right will also be on the left side, unlike what you see here. There's 42 locations that are also getting what's called leading pedestrian intervals. Those are the pedestrian head starts. When you push the button, you get a walk light, and the cars still have to wait because they have a red light for a little while, and the pedestrian gets to get started. Then the vehicles are released with a green. Pedestrian is already partway across the street. It breaks that tie. Who's supposed to go first? Car wants to turn right, pedestrian wants to cross, and when it gets green at the exact same time, the pedestrian's supposed to go first. Well, this enforces it fully. The pedestrian gets the walk light and the car still has a red. So it's a safety feature. It's being used selectively. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to use it. It's best when there's a right turn lane or something where you could have right turn vehicles that would tend to start up with the pedestrian. This is just letting you know about, we're going to transition into the actual complete streets policy where hopefully some of your questions can be answered. Again, I'll more than willing to stop in the middle. That's fine. That's no problem at all.
Yeah, could I just ask a question on the last segment? I thought it was interesting that you said that it isn't at every intersection or every time where you give the delay to the pedestrian.
Right.
But wouldn't it make it safer if it was uniform? So that everyone was always expecting that the pedestrian would go first rather than it be like a haphazard kind of thing?
The problem is if you use, I'll take downtown as an example, and don't think of the core downtown here, but some of the intersections that might be a little bit off to the side where pedestrians aren't as common, but we do this thing called pre-time. So we always bring up there's no button. The signal goes, whether there's a person there or not, it goes to walk. If we did that in an area where pedestrians are not super common, then it's going to do it every time. And you're sitting there at a red light, there's no one going, and you're like, I don't know why this light hasn't turned green. Oh, the walk light's on, there's nobody here. People get a little frustrated, they might start running the red light. You're losing capacity, you're sitting for what we call no reason. So if we do that, it's best to do it where there's a button that distinguishes between whether a pedestrian is there or not. Now, at a busy downtown like Main, State, and Exchange, it totally makes sense to run it all the time. And I will be doing that. So the walk light will come up, people will start walking, then the vehicles get a green. But when you get to these intermittent intersections where pedestrians are rarer, not there all the time, this doesn't make sense to either the driver or the pedestrian. The nice thing about it, if you do it selectively, you push the button, for example, at one, and now it behaves different. When the pedestrian wasn't there, you didn't see this delay. Now the pedestrian's there, you do see it. So it kind of calls attention, hey, something's different. Then we get out to intersections where you don't have the conflict at all with pedestrian. For example, a one-way street. The pedestrian crosses, when the green goes, nobody can turn into that street because it's one way coming into the intersection. It makes no sense to do it there. It's not going to have any purpose. So you get down, again, kind of like I said before, you kind of look at the individual circumstances and decide if it makes sense or not. But in every case, you do lose capacity. You make the intersection tighter. And that could, in some cases, cause a safety problem with it backing up. So again, you just kind of have to look at individual circumstances. I hope that helped.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. I may tend to over-answer questions. I apologize, but I'll err on the side of being robust. All right. The key thing about this is we do this on every capital and major maintenance project. So when we are thinking about just simply repaving the surface, we're not changing the road width or anything, but we're repaving. We go through this checklist each and every time to see if there are opportunities for a complete streets improvement. So I tell guys, even if you have the correct number of lanes, let's look at the lane widths, let's look at the shoulder widths, let's try to get is there anything at all we can do, even if it's modest? Move that line in by a foot or whatever. And so we are always using this checklist whenever we begin a capital or major maintenance project. Those are the ones where we're going to go out and pave the road. There's 4 sections here, the purpose, the background, goals, objectives, and exceptions in our Complete Streets policy. And as we look at it, there we go. Whoops, did I?
Yeah, I think you might.
Okay, sorry. So again, in order to get design approval, we have to fill out that checklist. Here's what we go. So we're looking at, can we do a road diet? Are bicycle lanes possible here? Do shared use lanes make sense? That's one where we put the sharrows on the road and make it clear that a bicycle may be in the lane. There are a few times where we have to do that. We just can't keep a bicycle lane going through an intersection. we can get them approaching it, and at the other side, we want to make it clear that through the intersection, you may be mixing up with bicycles, and then it splits again on the other side. These are considerations we're doing. Sometimes we add shoulders that aren't there, if we can. They could be helpful. Sidewalks, the median refuges, this is the kind of things that Tom talked about earlier. Curb extensions or bump outs, can we squeeze down the corners to help shorten the crossing distances? I didn't mean to do that, sorry. ADA ramps, are they adequate? That's a big thing right now, is adjusting ADA ramps to make them compliant. Maybe it's a diagonal and needs to be split to individual directions. Crosswalk markings again. Can we do these accessible ped signal devices? Do we need more of them out there? Sometimes we think we wouldn't need them, and later on we learn of a land use in that area that, oh, that should have one on there. By the way, we don't put them at every intersection for a couple of reasons. There is a high cost to them, both in terms of installation and maintenance, but also they can be a nuisance because they do put out noise all the time. So we've had some pushback that, you know, if you don't really need them, just beware that if a resident lives nearby, that thing can go off in the middle of the night, wake them up, whatever. So we just kind of environmental thinking there a little bit, but it's subtle. Again, countdown to but so all the things that we would be thinking about are being looked at as we approach a project. We don't do private driveways or developments. We don't do state, town, or village projects. Somebody asked about state roads. The policy only applies to county roads and city streets. And then if there's some factors on there, scarcity of population, travel, not really attractors, meaning that destinations for people, there's a problem with environmental social impacts. Environmental impact being like widening a road goes into wetlands, for example, or we have problems with cost or safety or timing implications. There's some exceptions. That does not mean we don't look at the checklist. It's just as we go through there, we take these things into considerations that we don't literally have a blank piece of paper like it might seem. There are some constraints to consider, but in general, we're trying to look for every opportunity we can. To make this a reality, we work with the county and town governments, and believe it or not, occasionally with state DOT, but most of the time not. But if it is across, again, two roads crossing each other, we will work with them. Many of the towns have long-term transportation plans, and the county's getting ready to do one of its own. And I'm talking about here active transportation plans. The county is preparing to do one of its own. Tying all these together, we make a great effort to learn about, read about, process through, and make a decision on each and every recommendation in their quarter studies and their town-wide studies to see how did that apply to this county road? Can we fulfill their desire? Or is there a particular reason we cannot fulfill it? Or in a few cases, we don't agree with what they wrote. There have been times when the consultant got a little ambitious, if you will, and started to apply things uniformly in places we think, I don't really agree that that is the appropriate device there. But we look through it, we discuss it with the town, get their input back to work together. And it will take time to go around and see the results countywide because the projects occur one at a time. And so we have, again, different complete street results depending on the character of the road as well. Let me see what I've got here. That's the thank you. Did we have the actual policy? Or
yeah,
something?
I think we sent the PDFs out. I don't know if everybody received it. We sent the policy and the checklist.
We're going to bring that up because
Pull it up.
I wanted to.
We did receive them, thanks.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and bring that up. It may answer some of the questions you all had. So there's a. There was also the highway lane with. Oops. Okay, we'll get back in here in just a second here. I'm sorry. Yeah, I see it.
Sure.
Okay.
There we go. So this is the policy itself. Let me go down a little bit. So as Jim mentioned, there are 4 sections: the purpose, which is kind of what we talked about in our presentation, as well as the background. What are complete streets? Why are they beneficial? Some of our goals and objectives. I won't read through all these right now, but a lot of it ties into what our presentation was all about, a lot of the advantages and reasons for complete streets. And then there's a section at the end about the exceptions, like Jim was talking about.
Do you have the, there was a highway geometrics,
Yeah,
document.
Let me just pull up the checklist first.
Yeah, okay, sorry. We're walking you through this. Oh, this is good, yes. This will get, these are the specific things we're looking for.
So this is a checklist that we would fill out. There's 2 separate checklists, one for capital projects, which are typically more complex. You might be replacing the road, milling out the road, replacing the curbs, putting in gutters, etc. This one has a little bit more robust of a checklist: install, widen, paved shoulders, narrow travel lanes, consider road diet, etc. And there's a little bit more basic for maintenance projects, which we're typically not doing that complex work. We're typically just either paving over what's there or doing a very small mill and overlay. So there's not as much opportunity for these projects. A lot of it would just be about the striping with the same width of the road. As Jim mentioned, we're not really changing the width of a road on maintenance projects unless we're adding a couple feet to the shoulder.
Yeah. I do want to note the box at the bottom is important. All active transportation plans, traffic studies, and other standing recommendations related to complete streets within the project limits have been reviewed and considered. So we pick up on other people's work. A traffic study could be a development going in, something like that, which is going to attract more walking, biking, whatever. So whatever standing recommendations are out there, we do our best to put them into the project. I think that's very important. Not sure, that's been running for 3 or 4 years at least, maybe longer. We keep a very robust database on what recommendations are proposed for any particular location. We track them, and as they get completed or implemented, we track that as well.
Do you want me to pull up the geometric?
Yeah, the geometric highway would be helpful. That's the other one. I'm sorry, folks, we've got one more here.
Second here.
Give us 1 minute, and then we can,
Maybe while you guys are doing that, I can jump in and just make some commentary. And we appreciate your unbridled enthusiasm to complete streets. It's very helpful and informative. And I always learn something when you make the presentation. So as you guys know, keep this in mind. Our group is after reducing greenhouse gas, right, and gas emissions, reducing the county's carbon footprint, and really getting your dang motorists to switch to electric vehicles or ride their bike. I'm kidding. No, we're a little serious. But anyway, so one thing that I thought might be worth this group exploring a little bit too, and talking to you about it is, safety is super important, but again, the charge of this group is looking at climate action and greenhouse gas reductions, carbon footprint reductions. So how can a complete streets policy work towards that end? Any thoughts from either the committee or Jim and Tom on that?
yeah. Okay, Mike, just one last thing to share with you, if I could. It just that I was going to put this on the presentation, and it was too small to read, so I had an external document, which is up there now. This is the question about the lane widths. This is the guidelines for any situation, what is recommended for lane widths to be safe about it. And as you can see, the conclusion could be anywhere from 12 down to 10 feet. Depending on the context, many of them do allow 10-foot lanes, but there's minimum and desirable. The definition between minimum and desirable may be one where you might say, as this committee, well, go with the minimum every time. We certainly look at that, but just keep in mind that minimum is, it's actually when the truck traffic, just barely, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You have to read the one footnote there. Okay. When the truck traffic is less than 4 to 5%, that is when the minimum lane width comes into play. And then if you're a curb lane width and have no shoulder, there's a 14-foot minimum. So I just want to let you know, it's a little bit, there's a little bit more caveat as to whether you go to 10-foot or 11-foot lanes. If we fit the 10-foot criteria in here, then we will, and it makes sense, we'll do that. So we are trying to make the lanes as narrow as practical. I hope that helps with that. Please, Mike, I jumped on your question, sorry.
Well, that's okay. No, I understand the details kind of important, and I think I'll never look at a road the same again now that I know some of the geometrics that you guys are looking at with your different lane widths and curbs and all that stuff. So it makes good sense. As I think it's informative for the group, just out of interest, nothing
Okay.
else. Thank you.
So your question is, how does this policy apply to make a more sustainable environment, I believe?
Yeah, in other words, how can we roll this into our climate action plan and use that as a tool?
Okay, well, a couple things. One is that I think the implementation of active transportation plans around the county, towns, villages, the city has them. They are aimed specifically at trying to get as much safe and encouraged travel on other modes as possible. That is their goal. So by implementing them, we are encouraging and accommodating other users, which in the manner I think that's most appropriate for serving them without compromising everything else that we try to do here. So that is part of it, is to get that active transportation network implemented through projects and other means as much as we can. This is the process for doing that. This is the process where we say, okay, the road should be narrowed how much, or the lane can be narrowed how much. Should we do shoulders? Should we do bike lanes? Again, that's mostly context. Primarily, we're a big supporter of bike lanes in the city, by the way. We were pushing them before the city was. Road diets, we were actually pushing those before the city got on board and said, oh yeah, these are a good idea. It's now a good two-way understanding of road diets. The city has done many of them. So we've been kind of a leader all along. But right now, the momentum is there. Keep it going. We have done a lot of our intended improvements, but there's many more to be done because many roads have never been touched in the last 10 years. So that process is continuing, Mike. There's all projects have that public forum where the public comes in. Bicycle groups are very vocal there. I can't say a pedestrian group necessarily comes out and is vocal, but certainly the bicycle groups are invited to and participated in each and every one. They come in with a detailed idea of, could you do this particular treatment here, and have lots of suggestions. We work with them, so that's in between the two processes of identifying what we could do and actually doing it.
I was just going to add on to what Jim said about our public participation for our county DOT capital projects. Just recently during the COVID crisis here, we've started recording YouTube videos and posting them to YouTube and posting that link to the county DOT website rather than having in-person public meetings on weeknights, and we're finding we're getting a lot more public interest, a lot more comments doing that. So we think we're going to keep doing that from here on out, and it just gives residents and officials in the area of our projects longer time. If they're busy that night and they can't make the meeting, they're probably more likely to go to our website and watch the presentation. So we are having good luck with that.
All right.
Good.
So we're trying to do good planning and good implementation to kind of wrap that up, and with communication with both the public, the towns, and committees like yours.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Good deal, thanks. Yeah, I think, Mike, to the extent that plans like these can encourage bicycling and walking, that's one avenue of decreasing carbon emissions. No doubt we'll be driving for a long, long period of time, but I know the sidewalks along East Avenue in the town of Pittsford have been a huge success because many folks use them. And we would have liked to have had bicycle lanes on Route 96, but that's a whole nother story, which I'll
Sorry there, Matt.
For another day.
I also have a personal commitment. I've ridden over 7,500 miles this year on a bicycle. I'm a high-level user. I commute to work almost every single day of the year. It's 7 miles each way, so it's not a little jaunt.
Oh, that's not trivial.
So just to let you know, I'm also committed that way. My personal experience comes into play here. And I'm not trying to brag. It sounds like I am, but I find that riding these is one of the best ways. Is through the handlebars, is to find out how it works, and walking too.
Well, you're doing more to reduce greenhouse gas emissions than I am, so I appreciate that with your bike riding.
Yes,
Well,
thank you.
I just like to, if I could jump in, I really, really appreciate your presentation and your enthusiasm for your work and the complexity of it. So this is in no means meant to direct it at the staff at all. But when those of us who do something regularly, we get used to it, right? So if we want to encourage people who are currently not bikers, who are currently not walkers, you have to look at it from their eyes. And part of their discomfort is like, it is really intimidating. I would no more drive in the middle of the right lane on Elmwood Avenue than I would walk barefoot down the middle of it. It's just like, that would be insane to me. And I do more biking than most people. But, so we
We lost ours.
Did we lose Sue?
I think we did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't hear anymore. I really appreciate the presentation this afternoon. I think the vast majority of the public takes roadways for granted, but being a classically trained engineer, I never will and never have. I just find the science of roadway engineering design, paving, striping, and traffic management absolutely fascinating. So,
Chairman, can I add one point to all of this?
Pat.
Greenhouse gas emissions are 28% transportation by sector in the United States in 2018. And of that 28%, 60% is cars, light duty vehicles. And so that's really what we're looking at when we talk about these things, is trying to figure out a way to get some of that 60% down to a greater share of cyclists and pedestrians. Really, to answer your question, like that's how I see this coming into play with this committee.
right. And to the extent that we can encourage bicycling and walking, so much the better, right?
And by the way, Pat, I've seen you commute on the bike a number of times. I know you're doing it too. Good for you.
I am, but I would agree with Sue. There are definitely some areas of improvement for people who are less experienced than you and I.
Oh, yeah.
And I would not send them down Elmwood Avenue either. That would not be my choice. But it's funny because Westfall Road parallels Elmwood. I know it's a couple blocks or a little bit distance away. It's a far better experience on Westfall Road, and you get to the same places you do on Elmwood. We have to go out of the way a little bit, depending where you're going. But there are, if people are aware of routes that are suitable, you find out that you can get all over this region with some very comfortable routes. For example, I had somebody who lives at the corner of Highland Drive Avenue, the one that's near the Can of Worms. And he lives right there by 590. And he's like, I have no idea how to get to the airport where we work. And I said to him, well, if you went, this will seem a little odd to you, but take the Brighton Bike Boulevard, which is called, it's Hillside. It goes down, parallels 590, head south, cross over at Monroe Avenue, or actually cross Edgewood, and there's a connection there that will take you to Edgewood Avenue. Oh yeah, I remember that. There's a pedestrian path goes from one neighborhood to another. Take Edgewood down, you hit the canal trail, make a right turn, and you never get on a road that's difficult on the entire route. And he tried, he goes, oh my gosh, I had no idea, and it's not much longer than, say, Elmwood, but it's maybe another mile, but he's like, I can't believe how easy that was. Just to use a different route than the one I kept thinking that I take in my car. So that's all I'll say. Sometimes it's just a matter, I know that facility isn't very good, but there's one nearby that is quite a comfortable trip. And if you just use a little understanding or a little different routing, you can get this whole trip in on a very comfortable route.
Yeah,
So,
no, and that's certainly a good
personally,
point, Mr. Polchek. I agree. And maybe, as apps develop and people, start looking at, mapping out their trips a little better, But my point is really just that, in other cultures, they de-incentivize driving. And I think until we start looking at our transportation system with the goal of de-incentivizing the personal car, we're just not going to make a whole lot of headway. And this doesn't just apply to complete streets, but to a whole host of things, right? So,
Yeah.
I love electric cars, and that'll be great. But there are other approaches, I think, that could be more equitable and promote more public transit and so forth. So just throwing out some thoughts. So
Our competition is tough. Just watch all the, I'm sorry. Our competition is tough. Watch the car ads on TV. Watch the car ads. What do they show you? It's comfortable, it's fun, it's secure, it's quiet, it's versatile, it takes you wherever you want to go. The ad messages being put out for buying a car and using a car are very, very strong. I just share that with you. That's our culture. I'm not sure you'll see it in some of the countries you might envision where cars are not nearly as dominant. But we have a really tough battle with Detroit, I'll call it, but with the car industry.
If I could just jump into, and they'll be part of our goal, I think, as part of our plan, to Pat's point and to Sue's, what more can we do in the county to encourage people to ride their bicycle, take alternative forms of transportation, and use this policy and weave it into the plan in some way, shape, or form. And we'll bring the consultant in on that as well, too, whether it's creating usable maps, an app, or something that can encourage people to take alternative forms of transportation. So this is good background for us. And again, I think something that the consultant will want to use. Right now, it's just an internal policy within the county, could be formally adopted by the legislature because, our green building policy was adopted by the legislature many years ago. I'm sure it'll weave into Pat's comprehensive plan as well, too, looking countywide. So I think this is a good primer for us, if nothing else, to better understand kind of where the county's at and where it's going. And obviously, Tom and Jim are experts in this field. So I guess that's all I would have to say there.
Thank you, Mike.
Good deal, Mike. Thank you. Jim, Tom, many thanks again. There is no public forum this afternoon, but before we close, I'd like to just take a minute and ask everyone to consider providing some feedback on a recommendation that Haley Farrington made. As you remember, Haley was our guest speaker last month, and she presented us with clean energy communities. She recommended that the county actually pursue both clean energy communities and climate smart communities designations. Let's start with clean energy communities designation first. And that allows us to qualify for grant funds while earning credit toward climate smart communities designation. Personally, I like the idea. I think the idea has a lot of merit, and I know Co-Chair Udelson agrees as well. I personally think the county is capable of achieving both, and really we already have implicit approval from the county legislature. Remember, our climate smart recommendation resulted in Resolution 260 of 2020, which was approved 29-0 and adopted on October 12th of this year. So I'm going to ask Mike just to weigh in for a moment with his thoughts first, and then given the fact that it's close to 4:45 right now, perhaps some of you who feel strongly about pursuing both, maybe climate smart after, clean energies, might send an email to Mike Udelson, Mike Garland, myself, and Sue Hughes Smith. But Mike Garland, let me start with you. Do you want to just give us some thoughts to that end?
Yeah, sure. There was a very informative presentation last time. I think certainly we want to pursue both, evaluate both, pursue both. They provide us a very nice framework, I think, as we develop our plan. Certainly our consultants familiar with them. I don't want to say it's a no-brainer, but in many respects, we see our counterparts pursuing both as well, too. So I think we should continue on that path.
Good deal. Mike, does anyone else want to weigh in? But like I said, feel free to send an email between now and January if you want to think this over. But I agree with Mike Garland. I think both are certainly in the realm of possibility. And I think CEC first provides us opportunities for grant funding and gives us a venue right into climate smart. Sue, go ahead.
I would absolutely agree with you, Matt. I mean, climate, CEC is much easier to accomplish and lets us access to grant funding for sure.
Absolutely.
But both are good programs, and we should pursue them. Yeah.
And again, I don't think we need to go back to the ledge for this because we already had our Resolution 260 adopted unanimously back in October. So I think we're cleared to do this. And I think Mike Garland agrees too, so.
So what's the step then? Is it just directing, what do we have to do? Is it just telling Mike to do it, or what's the?
I think ultimately Mike is going to end up managing the effort, but it might make sense for us between now and January, maybe a small subcommittee to get together and lay out the steps required to audit what we have in place, do a quick inventory, and then decide on the high impact practices for CEC, and then kind of lay out the roadmap into CSC.
Mhm.
I think a lot of it exists already. We just have to put the puzzle together.
Mhm.
That's my thought. Mike, are you up to that? We can talk between now and our
Yeah,
January
we
7th
certainly
meeting.
can. Let's talk about it, see what the next steps would be, and
Yeah.
maybe regroup and just evaluate that. You know, are there any formal steps we need to take, or is this something that becomes a recommendation? I think, like you said, we're cleared to move forward with that. I think it's just gonna be a component of our plan moving
Right.
forward. Maybe
Mhm.
want to consult with talk to the consultant as well
Yeah.
too, and just get their input.
Maybe this can be one of their first steps for us. Okay, good deal. Any other thoughts after today's presentation, our last conversation? Okay, going once, going twice. All right. If that's the case, oh, I'm sorry, Tom, did you want to say something? Nope. Oh, I guess not.
Nope,
Okay.
no, I'm
All
sorry,
right.
thank you.
All right, good. Well, if that's the case, let me ask, do I have a motion to adjourn? Thumbs up? Do I have a motion? All right, I'll tell you what, I'll move that we adjourn. I'll just need a second.
Sure, I'll second.
All right, Sue, thank you. You saved the day. All in favor, ayes or a thumbs up since we're on Zoom? All right, looks like the ayes and the thumbs up have it. Once again, thanks to our guests and many thanks to all you committee members for your time this afternoon. Please enjoy the upcoming holiday season and stay warm and healthy. We'll reconvene again on January 7th of next year. So we'll see you then. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the
Happy
holidays.
Great job.
Thank you.
Chair
Happy
O'Connor, great
holidays.
job.
Happy holidays.
Ciao.
See you, folks.
Bye now.
Happy holidays.